I do think it's softened up a little bit over time during my testing, but overall it's not a soft shoe. So there's not a lot of sink in this shoe, that translates to there's not a lot of bounce either. Testing is complete and the scores are in, and this is the full review of the HOKA Clifton 10. But before we get into it, a big shout out to my #1 running store, the Running Company at Geelong. I've got a link to their website in the description. Make sure you go check out that and check out all their running gear. And also guys, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And in the specs, so this one is a neutral, probably max cushion daily trainer these days, and you're going to be able to pick it up in Australia for a pretty expensive $270, and it's only $150 in the US. Now in the weight, so still for a big shoe, pretty lightweight package, 270 grams or 9.5 ounces. Now that's the weight of this shoe, my size, a US 8.5. In the stack, so we've had a stack increase here, 42 in the rear, 34 in the front, and that's going to give us a 8mm drop. Now for the scores, so in the US, this shoe I think is at the right price point, but in Australia, I think it's $50 overpriced, and for that, it's getting a 6 out of 10. And for the weight, as I just said before, for such a big shoe, it's still a pretty light shoe for what you get, especially with this really big stack. So pretty happy here with the weight, 7.5 out of 10. And in the upper, so the material that they're using here is what they call a jacquard knit. Now the material itself, it's quite thick, it's quite robust, so it's going to last a long time, which is great for a daily trainer, but the breathability in the shoe could be better. So it's not that breathable. It's not too bad here for Australia now because we are in winter, but for you guys in the Northern Hemisphere going into summer, it's going to be a hot shoe for you guys. Solid heel counter at the back. We've got that big Achilles flare here, which I quite like. Plush amount of padding around the heel collar and a plush amount of padding on the tongue as well. Now the tongue is not gusseted, but it doesn't need a gusset because it's got this double eyelet that holds the tongue in place. Does a great job, doesn't move around left or right. Very standard lacing system here from the Clifton. It's going to be very similar to the one you've seen in all their previous models. Same sort of laces as well. No issues with the laces coming undone. In the lockdown department, I get a pretty good midfoot lockdown here and no heel slippage in the back. Now, big improvement in this model, I think, is the fit of the Clifton. So true to size in the length, but the big improvements here is in the width. So it has to be the widest normal fitting Clifton I think I've tried on, because the width for me is perfect. If anything, I think it's a little bit roomy. Good amount of volume in the toe box. Usually Clifton, or historically Cliftons, are very narrow. It's certainly not the case in this shoe. Now stepping comfort, not too bad here. It's not really overly soft and squishy, but build quality, I must say, is excellent. Overall in the upper, not too many gripes here. I think it's only down for its lack of breathability, 8.5 out of 10. And in the outsole, so what I really love here is just the amount of rubber that they've used on the bottom of the shoe, not just lathered all over the bottom, and they've just got it shaped into these segmented pods. Now, the rubber itself, it's quite thick, it's quite firm. I believe it's that high abrasion or durable rubber that they use. So it is, as I said, quite thick. It will show signs of wear early though, so I've got a fair bit of wear, especially in my high wear areas. But I'm not really concerned about the durability of this rubber. I think it's just going to do a pretty good job there. But in the performance-wise, so in the grip department with this shoe, so in the dry, obviously, all shoes are great. Goes all right here on a dirt road or on a light trail, but in the wet, on a freshly wet road, this grip does have its issues. It does become a little bit of an ice skate. And from that, in the scores, that's probably its only downfall to me, is its performance on those freshly wet roads. 7 out of 10. And in the midsole, very simple design here. One big slab of that compression molded EVA. So no plate or anything in the shoe, but it's still a pretty stiff shoe, but it's got a nice flex point there, right under the forefoot there, which I think is the best place for that. Now in the geometry department, we do have a early stage meta rocker, as what's so famous in all the HOKA shoes, but I think it feels a little bit later in this shoe, but I quite like it where it's placed, so it really does value add to the ride of this shoe. What I will say though is the rigidity of this shoe, so the twist test left and right, it's quite a stiff shoe, and that certainly does translate into the ride. And in the ride, well, if you watch my first impressions review, I did describe the ride as a very densely cushioned shoe that wasn't overly soft or overly exciting in any way, but it was a stable ride. Now, has my opinion changed of the shoe? Well, no, it hasn't. I do think it's softened up a little bit over time during my testing, but overall it's not a soft shoe. So there's not a lot of sink in the shoe, that translates to there's not a lot of bounce either. The cushioning is so dense, so it takes all the road feel out of the road, so you're very protected from the road. It's a very stable shoe as well, but it's certainly not exciting. There's no bounce in the shoe, there's no responsiveness in the shoe, there's certainly just no excitement in the shoe. Overall, I would describe this ride as safe, very bland, and very boring. But overall, I must say I'm pretty disappointed in the ride, especially for the price point here in Australia. 6.5 out of 10. And best use is exactly what it's designed for. So it's a daily trainer, so it's going to be perfect for your daily miles. So your easy runs, your recovery days when your legs are banged up, nice and stable, nice and safe, highly cushioned, just going to protect you from the road. Can you use it for a long run? Well, yeah, I think you could, because it's not overly soft and squishy, so you're not, it's not zapping energy out of you when you're running this shoe. So I'll give it the tick for the long run. What it certainly doesn't get the tick for is any type of speed work. So some other options out there if you are considering this shoe. So the first one I'll mention is the Nike Vomero 18. Now that shoe is $50 cheaper than this shoe. It's softer, it's bouncier, and the ride is much more exciting. The next shoe I'll mention is the Tarkine Autopilot. So it shares lots of design similarities with this shoe. However, the ride and the midsole foam that they use in the Tarkine is much better here. So it's much softer, much smoother, delivers a much more premium ride than this shoe. It's also $40, $50 cheaper than this shoe as well. The last one I'll mention, if you want a premium daily trainer, you want to pay premium prices and you get a premium level of performance, and that is the New Balance 1080. So the issue with this Clifton here in Australia is that it's got a premium daily trainer price, but it performs like a budget daily trainer. And as I've just mentioned in the other options, some of the budget daily trainers actually outperform this shoe. So yes, it's got great build quality, but the performance is really lacking in the shoe. The midsole foam really does need an upgrade, because this shoe is really getting left behind by its competitors. And as you can see there in the scores, that's really reflected there in how this shoe has scored. So not a great score, and it's certainly not a definite buy from me. I would certainly consider other options. But anyway, guys, that's it for me. Any questions you've got regarding this shoe or how it compares to anything else, just drop it in the comments. Don't forget to hang around after this, because I do put the runner leaderboard up on the screen. Thanks for watching. Make sure you give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.